Support me, Apple Juice. I need a sponsor, and I will sell out. Good for you. Hello and welcome. It is 9:30. It is the 9th day of March 2021. I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the OGGM, and tonight we're, for reasons I cannot understand, talking about the often imitated and frequently duplicated iconic Tomb of Horrors. And I'm not sure why we're talking about Tomb of Horrors, so let's just preface this little discussion with the fact that over the past couple days, just with my perusing of the YouTube universe, I've stumbled across at least half a dozen videos, some of them relatively recent, talking about the iconic Tomb of Horrors. And I'm not sure why, because we haven't heard from old Demi-Lich Face, Acererak, I think I'm saying that right, in a while, not since Tomb of Annihilation. So unless he's in the new Candlekeep mystery book, or more likely is showing up in the Ravenloft book, though actually probably we have a better chance of seeing Vecna than Acererak in the Ravenloft book because of reasons. And Vecna actually has been in Ravenloft. I don't know why, other than the collective unconsciousness of gamers is weird. But yeah, it's a thing. People are talking about Tomb of Horrors again. And most of them are complaining about it. Now, Tomb of Horrors holds a special place in the pantheon of D&D modules. There's no other modules quite like it. Lots of modules have tried to duplicate it, both from TSR Wizards of the Coast and from individual things, and almost everybody has tried to make their own Dungeon of Death, Door of Death, knockoff Tomb of Horrors. One of my favorite is the Tomb of Horrors, which was a Korean knockoff Tomb of Horrors that somebody made. I don't know. I think it got published in Space Gamer, Fantasy Gamer, and basically it was like if the Koreans had made a knockoff Tomb of Horrors, like instead of green slime, it was green Jello because they couldn't afford the green slime, and it was really funny. There's also like House of Cards and Mud Sorcerer's Tomb. There's a lot of, and Dungeon of Death. I mean, Lord knows how many Dungeons of Death there are. Even just the other day, I heard somebody talking about how they needed to stat out their Lich's dungeon, So, Tomb of Horrors has been revisited several times. It has appeared in every version of Dungeons & Dragons since its initial thing. It's been expanded upon, rebuilt, rededicated. It always cycles back at just sort of this weird, iconic, one-of-a-kind module. There's no others really quite like it. And most of the reason why is because it relies so heavily on nonsensical puzzles and just the fact that you're going to die. I mean, it's just a death slog. Now, obviously, the 5th edition version of Tomb of Horrors is a lot easier to go through than the original Tomb of Horrors because 5th edition characters are tougher. But even still, it is just this singular location of doom. And a lot of the people who have been talking about it recently have just been talking about how it makes no sense and how awful it is. And that, why take your characters through this? It's not fun. And I will admit that, well, especially the original Tomb of Horror, which had a lot of save or die type traps and a lot of just things to mess with your character and take your stuff away and just totally slaughter you, it was awful. I mean, obviously the 5th edition version is very much toned down because 5th edition, but still, it's just an awful place. That makes really no sense whatsoever, other than the fact that if you look at it from the point of view of Acererak, where he just goes around building these things for the sole purpose of testing people, slaughtering them. Acererak gets his experience points from people dying in his tombs, his various trap-filled things. So if you look at it from that point of view, then yeah, I mean, it's a series of experiments, a series of traps, a series of cool things that this, plane shifting lich threw together in one place just to test people. And yes, it's awful and makes no sense. But in defense of Tomb of Horrors and its awfulness and its senses is that you're looking at it like it's a module that's supposed to be run the same way Storm King's Thunder is, or Forge of Fire. Like, you're just supposed to make it part of your campaign, and you're supposed to take your beloved 8th level character through there, and then, oh my god, what? I got killed? That's not fair. That's awful. And that's wrong. Tomb of Horrors, much like Vecna Lives and several other modules of the similar state, is a tournament module. It's not supposed to be run as part of a campaign. It's supposed to be run using disposable characters, and you're supposed to fail. The whole point was, how quickly could people at the original tournament when Tomb of Horrors was first run get from point A to the finish, how much they could accomplish, how many of the puzzles they could figure out, how many of the checkpoints they could reach. I mean, it was rats in a maze. You weren't supposed to bring in characters you made and loved and had devoted time to. There are pre-generated characters you're supposed to use, and they gave you stacks of pre-generated characters with the understanding that you're probably going to die. But the point was not to, I'm going to live and succeed. It's like, how far can I get? I mean, think of it like Wipeout or Ultima Ninja Course or, any of these other stunt-based game shows. Tomb of Horrors was a stunt-based game show. You were timed. You had, I think 3 or 4 hours for a group of people, several groups of individuals, all going through it at the exact same time. Now, the group that got the farthest would then move on to the next round, which is usually either in a couple hours later or the next day. And then they would go through Tomb of Horrors a second time, usually with the same characters or with new characters. But they were disposable characters. Nobody was running their own characters through Tomb of Horrors. Then the second group that got the farthest would go on to the finals, where you would have the 2 groups who got the farthest or scored the most points or sudden death or whatever. And then the winner would get, a trophy maybe. I mean, it was a long time ago. Maybe they got money. Maybe they just got their names in a module. Their characters were made, immortal NPCs who would show up in Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk history. But the point was, it is a stunt-filled game show with all these things that make no sense, including the poem at the front, where people complain the poem at the front doesn't tell me anything. It's not supposed to. It's Acererak literally messing with you. From the moment you enter the tomb, it's Acererak fucking with you. The poem, the clues, everything are red herrings. Nothing in there means anything. It was to see how far people could get, how many of the checkpoints they could reach, how many of the tasks they needed to accomplish to get to the next round. And then you had 5 or 6 different groups doing it. So yes, it's awful if you're running your beloved 8th, 9th, 10th level character in, OG original D&D, where you had save or die traps in Tombs of Horrors, and you're just getting killed in the very first room, and the DM's like, ha, 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 ha. Then yes, it's awful. But that's not how it was meant to be played, in defense. And if you read the Dragon magazines that have talked about Tomb of Horrors, and if you read Return to Tomb of Horrors, and especially if you read Tomb of Annihilation, it does go a little bit more into the personality of Acererak and why he builds these things. But you could just break it down basically just because he can, because he's an evil son of a bitch, and this is what he does to get off. And this is how he gets experience points. Much the same way your characters get experience points by going through the tomb, Acererak gets experience points every time the tomb succeeds. That's how he gets more powerful. And when you die, he goes and takes your stuff. He learns from his mistakes. And then he builds another tomb somewhere else, having learned from his mistakes from the previous one, and as he keeps getting better and better and better. And it's not about whether he wins or loses. He doesn't care. And Tomb of Horrors perfectly says that. Acererak doesn't care if you succeed or fail. He's testing you. and he's testing himself, and he's just seeing how much wacko gonzo crap can he get away with. A giant rolling dinosaur steamroller monster? Sure. How did I get this in there? Doesn't make sense. How can it do what it says it does in the encounter? It can't. Logically, it can't. But it does, because literally, I am pulling the rug out from underneath you. Literally, I am fucking with you because I can. That's the whole point of Tomb of Horrors. That is why, even though it has been duplicated and mined so many times, most of the time people just make even far deadlier, less sensical dungeons. How many dungeons of deaths are there? Because they don't understand, A, Tomb of Horrors is not meant to be part of a campaign. It's supposed to be a one-off with disposable characters. And B, you have to understand that the guy who built Tomb of Horrors doesn't care if he loses or wins. The point is not, to stop you from getting through. It's the point is, how far can you get, and what am I, Acererak, going to get out of watching you go through my trap-filled obstacle course of doom? I get the experience points of knowing what worked, what didn't work, what you enjoyed, what you didn't enjoy, what killed you too fast, what killed you not fast enough, which one of these nonsensical, stupid, ridiculous traps and encounters actually works. And then I'll repeat that in the next Tomb of Horrors, or the Tomb of Peanut Butter and Jelly, or the Tomb of Annihilation. Acererak didn't care if he was going to win or lose in Tomb of Annihilation either. It was never about him actually succeeding in waking up the soulmonger. It was about how far could he get, and what worked and what didn't work for him. That's his fun. Much the same way to a player character, the fun of the adventure is going through Tomb of Horrors. To Acererak, the fun is watching you go through Tomb of Horrors. So, yes, I can understand these various people talking about how awful it is, because you're coming at it from the point of view like it's something that's supposed to be part of your campaign, like any other published adventure. And it's not. It's a one-off. It's like the Christmas special adventure. Like, you get a bunch of your friends together, you get some pizza, you get some beer, you make stacks of disposable characters. One of them's got like a swarm of dogs or whatever. You're just going to run through to see how many traps. And he's like, we're going through Tomb of Horrors for the Christmas adventure. We're going to see how far we could get. And, whoever survives the longest gets a prize that they can then transfer over to their regular character in my game. That is the only way you should use Tomb of Horrors in your campaign. Acererak and Tomb of Horrors should not be part of the story of your campaign, unless it's the end goal of the 20th level characters at the end of your campaign to finally bring it to Acererak and go through all the Tomb of Horrors that he's scattered around the multiverse and just finally bring him down. Because every time the characters win and slay the Demi-Lich, Acererak loses something, and that's a point of his power. I mean, it makes it very clear at the end of the Tomb of Annihilation how much Acererak lost by if the player characters succeed in Tomb of Annihilation. So, yeah, I just thought I'd talk about it because reasons. And again, I don't understand why it's become a thing unless Acererak's going to show up again. I mean, he's always out there, and sooner or later, Wizards of the Coast is going to run out of ideas, and they're going to cycle back to, hey, let's do another Tomb of Annihilation, Tomb of Horrors knockoff. I mean, they've done it before. Dead and Thay, Temple, Tomb, and Tower. There's a couple others. Even Pharaoh are basically, let's try and recapture the magic of Tomb of Horrors. And there's nothing magic about Tomb of Horrors. It's a horrible place meant to mess with pre-generated characters. I mean, one of them is named Gleep Glorp the Eyebiter for some reason. Bowen the Stalwart. These guys were meant to die. It was a tournament module. Stop looking at it like it's supposed to be part of a campaign. It is literally called Tomb of Horrors. I'm your grumpy guide to all things gaming. If you appreciate this content, comment down below. If you don't appreciate this content, comment down below, because I can't fix it if you don't tell me what's broken. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Help me hit 500 subs by August 4th, and we'll do something crazy. And don't forget, the 350th sub is going to win a copy of the Mutants and Masterminds that's sitting on my shelf. Like, share, subscribe, support. Shout out to all my fellow YouTubers and all the people who are complaining about Tomb of Horrors. I will talk to you later. Vecna kicks Acererak's ass.